A Spark Primer, Volume 1, Lessons 1 through 6. An introduction, disclaimer, warning, and the primary objective of this course. Introduction. The author's intent for this primer is to provide knowledge of some basic principles regarding the nature of reality as remembered, experienced, and tested by the author. Disclaimer. This primer is not intended to provide every answer from every aspect or perspective of the cosmos, nor it is intended to be used as a reference for absolutes, treatise, or dogma. Warning. This course is not meant for general, casual, widespread distribution. It is recommended that this be used only as a tool under guidance and support with a trusted spiritual guide or advisor. All spiritual journeys are unique. If the information presented is not currently relevant to your personal journey, it can distract, deter, or derail important transitions in your spiritual path. If you have any reason to suspect that your spirit guides or spiritual advisors are telling you not to move forward, stop, close and delete this file, and focus on the spiritual path already set before you. Objective. The primary objective of this course is to provide context for an internal spiritual path to self-realization. For one to achieve self-definition, one must answer the primary questions: who am I? Why am I here? And what is my purpose? In order to achieve this, one must understand the basic concepts of the nature of this reality to provide context for self-realization. This course seeks to help provide that context. A Spark Primer, Volume 1, Lessons 1 through 6. Table of Contents. Our prelude will be a simple definition of spark. Lesson 1 will provide a basic context for energetic origin. Lesson 2 will cover the basics of the elemental construct origin of this reality. Lesson 3 will provide context for understanding energetic exchange modalities within this reality. Lesson 4 will cover the concept of the Demiurge. Lesson 5 will cover the basics of construct entrapments, and Lesson 6 will provide some observational evidence of changes occurring within this reality. Lastly, we will contemplate some general conclusions based upon Lessons 1 through 6 and how it relates to the spiritual quest of self-definition and our course definition of spark. This is spark. Spark is from source. Spark is one of many sparks. Spark is not a boy. Spark is not a girl. Spark has light from source. Spark has love from source. Spark is love and light. Lesson 1. Energetic Origin. Source created the light web that reached out to infinity. The light web is like a highway for sparks to travel. The sparks' energy and light could connect to the light web so they could explore, create, and play. There were many places and dimensions for all the sparks to explore. Each dimension had interesting things for sparks to explore, create, learn, and play. The third dimension, while it was very low, heavy, and dense, had interesting elements. The elements are earth, air, fire, water, and space. Source pulled all the elements of this dimension together and layered them into various spheres and set them in motion. The initial energy from Source that set the spheres into motion is the same energy that keeps it in motion. It is self-sustaining. The energy is not destroyed. As it moves, it changes. As it changes, it moves. The construct of Gaia's sphere gave Sparks a great destination to explore, create, learn, and play with the elements of earth, air, water, fire, and space in the third dimension. As beings of energy, Sparks needed access to the light web to traverse dimensions into third-dimensional space. A light web conduit was installed on top Earth and routed to lower Earth, so that Sparks could tune in to the frequency of Gaia's sphere and cycle their energy down to its dimension and arrive. A railway station for travel of sorts, or a circuit board for guided travel of energy. A portion of what remains of the original light web conduit system on Earth is what we now know as a pyramid, which was an installation or series of installations on a sphere which would route to the core signature frequency of that sphere so that it can be accessed to and from the light web. For countless millennia, Sparks would travel the light web to the Gaia sphere conduit and cycle down to the third dimension to explore, create, and play with the elements of the third dimension. With the elements available there, a variety of organics were constructed. A variety of spheres within spheres within spheres, now known as particles, atoms, molecules, etc., were constructed and sparked with the energy of life built into the construct by Source. This was designed with the intent to be a self-sustaining ecosystem. The energy moves through the elements of the organic constructs. As it moves, it changes. As it changes, it moves. All are moving parts in an enclosed symbiotic ecosystem. Lesson 2. Elemental Construct Origin. Since Sparks are pure energy beings, organics were constructed in such a fashion to symbiotically host a spark, allowing the spark to actively engage with and experience third-dimension elements. Organics were beautiful and complex living creatures, organisms, plants, and animals that function based upon programming which we now call DNA. This symbiotic programming is also the source of what is called instinct. Gaia's sphere consisted of several layers. Organics proliferated on every layer of Gaia's sphere. When the firmament, the upper water layer, was sealed and put in place, top air was at consistent and even temperature and pressure which allowed for large and beautiful creatures and plants to flourish. One of the most beautiful and complex of the organic constructs were what we now call reptiles. Gaia's sphere was fully balanced and in a symbiotic state of energy exchange. A significant event occurred to affect the ecosystems of the Gaia sphere to what we now call Earth. Lesson 3. From symbiotic to amensalistic energetic exchange modality. What has transpired to cause the prehistoric Gaia sphere to come to its present state is too much to cover, and not necessary for our present learning objective for this course. We will cover the most simplified version so that you may understand the overall context for our conclusion. Essentially, a conflict occurred in which an entity, which we will call the Shining One, rejected the cosmic universal law of one and subsequently was bound to its elemental body and cycled down to this third dimension, unable to regain access to the light web. The Shining One found other sparks that were residing or arriving to this dimension and compelled them to offer assistance. At that time, other planets in the solar system were also layered and installed with light web conduits for exploration. The Shining One and other sparks attempted to modify a conduit on a planet known as Phaeton that was located between what is now known as Jupiter and Mars. The modification was an attempt to cycle up an elemental body into the light web so that the Shining One could be free from the restraint to this dimension. The attempt failed with catastrophic results. The conduit on Phaeton rejected the frequency, which then rebounded into its root, causing it to break apart. The large fragments broke the firmament of the planet, which is now called Mars, and also severed the connection of the Mars conduits to the light web. The sparks that were on Mars were disoriented and easily convinced to follow the Shining One, who promised to help repair the damages and secure passage back to the light web. At this time, Gaiasphere's conduit was still in place and functioning. Gaia was sealed and protected by a great firmament or a top layer of water. A plan was set in motion to sever Gaia from the law of one and gain control of the sphere and its organic construct system. The Shining One and the collaborating sparks knew that if the firmament was broken, over 90% of Gaiasphere's top Earth layer would flood, and the seals of all subsequent layers would be compromised, causing complete destruction and severing the original conduit link from the light web. An alternative conduit was needed to facilitate control of the Gaia Foundation route once the original conduit link was severed. They constructed an independent conduit on an artificially made hollow moon satellite in space. It was developed and modified for a dual purpose: to take Gaiasphere for its own and to block sparks from leaving so they could be used to continue to animate its organics. The satellite was set in place to hack into the Gaia route once the conduit installation was disengaged. The route, also known as Foundation, provides control and containment of matter-energy transfer. This is primarily observed as electromagnetic field balance, which affects air current, tides, organic system movement and migrations, etc. This dynamic is now observed as a relationship between the core of Gaia and the Moon, whose primary function is to maintain independent matter-energy transfer, control and containment. Once the Moon was set in place, a large piece of Phaeton that was destroyed between Jupiter and Mars was thrown into the firmament. The firmament seal was broken, causing a catastrophic flood. This was the catastrophe that marked the end of Gaiasphere's energetic exchange modality from a symbiotic service to others to an amensalistic service to self-state. Lesson 4. The Demiurge. Many sparks could see that something was not right and tried to evacuate before the impact, but many were caught in the artificially modified satellite conduit that was already set in its place in orbit. As the other sparks were released from their hosts in the cataclysm, and since the Gaiasphere conduit was damaged, they were also caught into the artificial conduit. There were some organics whose DNA equipped them for dimensional shifting and were able to escape the catastrophe to dimensional pockets. However, since they are intrinsically connected to Gaia, they also are affected by the containment. It was at this time that the Shining One, aka the Demiurge, set itself up as God to the Gaiasphere ecosystem and claimed it as its own. To keep life cultivating in its altered creation, the Demiurge needed to keep the sparks bound to its world and devised multiple layers upon layers upon layers of entrapments. The spark's energy was set as the power source for the artificial construct which hacked into Gaia's foundation. This moved the transfer of energy from a state of symbiosis service to others to a state of amensalism service to self. Consumption of others became required for the independent ecosystem to be sustained. This illustration is a symbolic representation of a symbiotic energy modality. Symbiosis is defined as a relationship in which each provides for the other the conditions necessary for its continued existence. As it moves, it changes. As it changes, it moves in a constructive cycle. Life sustains life. This illustration is a symbolic representation of a Amensalistic energy modality. Amensalism is defined as a type of interaction where one is harmed or destroyed while the other either benefits or remains unaffected. As it moves, it changes. As it changes, it moves in a destructive cycle. One has to die for another to live. Lesson 5. Basic principles of construct entrapments. To keep life cultivating in its creation, the Demiurge needed to keep the sparks bound to its world and devised multiple layers upon layers of entrapments. The first and most primary entrapment is a web-like electromagnetic field which was cast over the Earth. The field is a frequency that causes disorientation and weakens a disembodied spark so they can be more easily pulled through the conduit and recycled. This field also deters sparks from outside of the construct from entering. Many sparks have attempted to assist or have volunteered to enter in hope of weakening the entrapments and restoring the memories and freedom of others. They are often referred to as star seeds. The second layer of entrapment are multi-layered programmable bodies which were fashioned for each spark. First, an esoteric astral light particle-based body, which is now known as a soul. While this body is etheric, it can still be programmed similar to DNA and infused with instincts or programs. Secondly, there is a physical carbon particle-based body whose DNA has been altered from a self-sustaining symbiotic systems model to a degrading predatorial Amensalistic systems model. The DNA of each body is tuned to the specific frequency of the spark. The spark is tethered to the astral light particle body, which is then tethered to the organic carbon particle physical body. These bodies were programmed with traits that cause internal conflict within the tethered spark. The spark is in constant internal conflict with its soul and its body. All three components are bound together to create an agitation of the spark. This intense cosmic cognitive dissonance renders the spark into a coma-like state, while at the same time causes the spark to generate an energy which feeds and charges the system construct by which it is bound. When the physical body is no longer functioning, the soul body is still bound to the emerging spark and thereby is still restrained and influenced. The soul spark is caught up into the web and the machine, and the spark is easily deceived into continued contractual service through the traumas inflicted in its most recent memory. Fear, guilt, sorrow, despair, even false love, which is potentially guilt, fear, and sorrow for someone else. A false promise of purpose or a sense of guilt or obligation to a vow made in coercion or deception can also inflict the soul to influence spark to concede. Some examples of common between life entrapments: if you were programmed for evil and performed acts contrary to love and light of your spark, you may be persuaded to make things right or to have the opportunity to do good. If you were programmed for good, your soul would persuade spark to vow to finish what could not be accomplished. If you were in love or grief, your soul would persuade you to reunite with your love. And the list goes on and on. The point being is that while spark is the energy source from source, spark is still bound to the soul body and influenced to concede to the will of Demiurge. Once the spark concedes to the soul, it is sent back through the altered conduit device. Memories and energies are stripped from the soul to feed the machine, and a disoriented soul spark is sent back to be bound to a new body. While it seems that all new incarnations have a core innate residual quest for self-definition, the DNA of the carbon particle body has been continually modified and barriers have been put in place to prevent the answering of the questions that lead to self-definition. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Governments and religions have been used to provide the incarnation with incomplete or inaccurate answers to those questions. While the answers may have a large portion of truth, they are corrupted by the foundational Amensalistic modality, which always seems to result in recycling. Lesson 6. Evidence of change. There are indications that there is a degradation to the machine and its construct. Incarnations do not seem to be as solid and tightly bound as in the past. For example, from birth, Some savants can be endowed with miraculous skills in various arts that would normally take years of practice. More and more young children can recall very specific and verifiable past life memories. Soul-body gender polarity is not aligning with physical body gender, causing an exponential increase in agitation energy output. There is also a significant increase in irrationality in human logic, behaviors, and programming. There are many more indicators of change which can be seen by the casual observer. However, these indications may be a forewarning of preparation of the conduit to initiate a full reset. This has occurred many times. Many civilizations, many systems, many religions, many governments. However, all of them devoid of the law of one and with an Amensalistic energetic exchange modality foundation. Which brings us to our conclusion of Volume 1. A Spark Primer. Volume 1. Conclusion. Do you long to remember ages past? Many systems have risen. Many systems have fallen. Love and war programs have been set in perpetual motion for the purpose of harvesting source spark energy. Many civilizations, many governments, many deities, many councils, many plans. Do you want to restore an age of old for Demiurge? Do you want to create a new age for Demiurge? Or do you want to be free? This reality is multifaceted. Spark is asleep and tethered to the energy body. The energy body is then tethered to a physical body. The spiritual exercise is to find one's true self. First tendency is to spend energy on discovering, maintaining, and healing the physical body. Secondary tendency is to spend energy on discovering, maintaining, and healing the energy soul body. Both are important, however, it is easy to get stuck in that process. It is imperative to get our physical and spiritual bodies functioning as best as possible, so that there is minimal energy spent in maintaining them. Our primary energy and intent should be focused on self-realization and the waking of our true spark. Discovering, maintaining, and healing the physical body is important, but this activity will not lead you to the answers of the core self-realization questions of who am I, why am I here, and what is my purpose? Your identity is not in the physical body. The physical body is an elemental carbon particle construct which your astral energy animates. The physical body is primarily driven by an automated, predetermined program. Discovering, maintaining, and healing the astral soul body is important, but this activity will also not lead you to the answers of the core self-realization questions of who am I, why am I here, and what is my purpose? The astral body is an elemental light particle construct which is animated by your residual spark source energy. So, if your identity cannot be defined by the eternal astral soul body either, how do we even begin the path to self-realization? Then who are you? It is time for you to remember. You are spark. You are from source. You are one of many sparks. Your body may be any gender. Your soul may be any gender. Your spark has light from source. Your spark has love from source. Spark is love and light. You are spark. And remember, and be free. End of Spark Primer Volume 1.